The UGC equity guidelines or rules that created quite a storm in several parts of the country and also led to protests in parts of Uttar Pradesh and Gujarat and several other states have now been put on hold by the Supreme Court today. Supreme Court has made some very serious observations. The next hearing is going to take place on the 19th of March. Remember that it's mostly the general category students who are protesting against these rules, which basically looked like a reform to several people, and they just talked about bringing in equal opportunity centers in higher educational institutions to ensure and to prevent suicides and harassment that is often related to caste discrimination.
That's right, and of course strong political reactions as well. Remember, caste is always a delicate political issue to traverse for any political party that's in power. It often becomes an easier issue to deal with for an opposition party, but as far as Tamil Nadu is concerned, of course, very, very different caste realities. Firmly, the DMK firmly reiterating its support for the equity norms and also backing it, saying categorically that it needs to be held up. In fact, it needs to be even more progressive. Of course, there will be multiple political reactions that will play out over this delicate issue, which the UGC perhaps has set off with those guidelines. Let's listen into the reactions to the developments at the Supreme Court and the political reactions that came in earlier in the day before we head to our first panel this evening.
बहस हो रही है माननीय सुप्रीम कोर्ट में, तो बहुत सारे पक्ष उसमें सामने आ जाएंगे और हमें उम्मीद है कि जो यूजीसी के मामले में बातें निकल कर के आ रही हैं, अब जब चर्चा सुप्रीम कोर्ट में होगी तो हम लोग क्या और तर्क दे सकते हैं। हम सब का मानना यही है कि दोषी बचे ना और निर्दोष के साथ अन्याय होना।
सरकार का काम है अमन चैन स्थापित करे, वर्ग जात धर्म के नाम पे जो संघर्ष हो उसे रोके। पर भाजपा की सरकार वर्ग जात धर्म जो मिले आग लगाती रहती है। सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने इसकी मंशा को पहचाना, एक जन्नाटेदार तमाचा इनको मारा है और रोका है वर्ग संघर्ष को, जाति संघर्ष को, धर्म संघर्ष को, और ठीक किया है। मैं इसका स्वागत।
This case, it is an interim injunction. Let us see what happens during the debates. See, people may tell any opinion, but what is arguments were made before the judge is a question. Let us wait and see.
आदरणीय धर्मेंद्र प्रधान जी ने स्पष्ट कर दिया है, किसी भी समुदाय के साथ, किसी भी छात्रों के साथ कोई भेदभाव नहीं होगा।
गवर्नमेंट को एक बार फिर से सोचना चाहिए, आखिर ऐसे कौन से पॉइंट्स थे और क्या आपने ढंग से डिफाइन नहीं किया, क्या आपने ढंग से क्लेरिफिकेशन नहीं दिया, और कानून का मिसयूज। एज अ मदर ऑफ स्टूडेंट मैं भी कहूंगी कि पहले हमारे बच्चे स्टूडेंट हैं, चाहे वो एससी हैं, एसटी हैं, बैकवर्ड हैं, फॉरवर्ड हैं, स्टूडेंट हैं। आपके कानून में इतना क्लेरिफिकेशन होना चाहिए कि स्टूडेंट के बीच में एक तो नफरत नहीं फैले, डिफरेंसेस नहीं आए, और कोई भी स्टूडेंट किसी भी कास्ट का हो उसको ये डर ना हो कि मेरे साथ इस लॉ का मिसयूज हो सकता है। मुझे लगता है स्टैंडिंग कमेटी के रिकमेंडेशन में बहुत सारे ऐसे पॉइंट थे जिनको गवर्नमेंट ने सही ढंग से डिफाइन ना करके यूजीसी को दे दिया। उसमें मुझे लगता है स्टूडेंट के साथ ना ही पढ़ने वाले को बहुत बेहतर तरीके से डिफाइन हो रहा है कि आखिर इसमें किनके साथ मिसयूज होगा।
यूजीसी देखना उसमें क्या है। देश की सर्वोच्च अदालत ने फैसला दिया, रामलला का भव्य मंदिर बन गया। देश की सर्वोच्च अदालत का जो भी आदेश होगा वो तो खुशी की बात है।
देखिए, यूजीसी की जो नई गाइडलाइन है उसमें मुझे कोई अलग से कुछ भी नहीं दिखा। SC ST का तो कानून अपना बना हुआ है कि शेड्यूल कास्ट शेड्यूल ट्राइब के व्यक्तियों के साथ या छात्रों के साथ कोई भी बात होती है तो अलग धाराओं के अंदर नॉन बेलेबल धाराएं, मुकदमा भी दर्ज करना अनिवार्य और गिरफ्तारी भी अनिवार्य। अब कैंपस में ओबीसी को इसमें जोड़ा और दूसरा जो आरक्षित वर्ग उसको भी जोड़ा है। तो जो दूसरा आरक्षित वर्ग है उसमें तो सब जातियों के लोग हैं। फिर ओबीसी से किन जातियों को तकलीफ हमारे समझ में नहीं आ रही है। और जो हल्ला कर रहे हैं ये कैंपस में थोड़ी पढ़ रहे हैं, ये तो बाहर के लोग हल्ला कर रहे हैं। ये तो मामला तो कैंपस का। लेकिन सुप्रीम कोर्ट जस्टिस ने जो कहा कि इससे सामाजिक वैमनस्यता बढ़ेगी। निश्चित रूप से हम नहीं चाहते कि देश के अंदर सामाजिक वैमनस्यता बढ़े। हमारे जो बच्चे कैंपस में जा रहे हैं वो भारत का फ्यूचर है, उनको कभी ऐसा नहीं लगना चाहिए।
So how do we make sense of this debate and the sharp reactions and, of course, the observations in the court and the developments in the Supreme Court today? Joining us this evening, Professor Dr. Bala Gangadhara of the Ghent University in Belgium. He's been researching caste. You have Amita Sachdeva, advocate on record at the Supreme Court. Dr. Surya, who's been in this debate on NDTV quite often on this issue. We also have Sushant Singh, activist and advocate at the Supreme Court. Thanks to all four of you for joining us. My first question to you, Amita Sachdeva, how do you see, there have been sharp reactions to what happened in the court today. How do you see the developments from the court, and how do you see this playing out overall beyond the courtrooms as well?
See, as we all know that the Honorable Supreme Court has stayed the new UGC regulations, and by using its power under Article 142, it has said that 2012 UGC regulation will be continued till further orders. So the main provisions which have been challenged in the petition, although I don't have the copy of the petition, but as I heard in the news media, that one of the major sections, that is section 3C, which defines caste-based discrimination, that has been challenged. So the question arises, if there is a section already, which is section 3E in 2026 guidelines, and it was section 2B in the 2012 guidelines, which defined discrimination. So discrimination was on the basis of caste, creed, religion, etc., etc. So what was the need to add new section, that is section 3C, specifically mentioning that caste-based discrimination? So a question arises, if a discrimination is offense,
right,
it can be against anyone. It cannot be limited against a few sections of the society.
Okay. Yes. Let me take this question to Surya Jengde. Surya Jengde, one of the primary arguments of the petitioners was that, the new rules do not take evolving social realities into account, which means they feel that caste atrocities are not taking place now. And the other side, the ones who are against the stay order, have said that this is basically calling a fully abled person disabled. So there have been strong arguments on both sides. How do you react to this argument that when there are laws against caste, why do you need more laws?
It's good to see you, Veera, as well as Vasudha. Thank you for again hosting this panel. I think, see, the famous proverb goes, a guilty conscience needs no accuser. Indian society is bereft of any form of caste guilt that it carries because it has been ingrained into the social thinking of their own moral. And that's where the argument of against such kind of provisions are coming. Well, the merit of the argument can be taken into consideration. If there are laws already that define explicit discrimination, why there is a need for another promulgation? And that is a fair argument to take into account. But are you just making that as a procedural pushback, or are you just using that as in lieu of you trying to not give the students who are accused of discrimination a space for them to be held accountable? Now, that's where it has to be clarified. And we have seen, and it's very unfortunate to see the SP chief, Akhilesh Yadav, the congressperson, MP, and so forth, giving absolutely buffoonish arguments about this kind of trying to playing a level playing field. And we already have an evidence, Vasudha, 118% of this rise in cases. Now, let me also point out that the report that was presented, there were nearly 700 universities and 1,523 colleges whose report was presented, and that was a summation of an aggregate of cases that were held. And we have to pay attention that these are also universities in semi-urban areas, which is almost 60% Indian universities are not in metro big posh cities. They are in semi-urban to kind of rural adjacent areas, and nearly 60% colleges are there. So that's where the rife is. And so for us to really come to a conclusive, intelligent argument, we need to see that this has arisen out of the bedrock of the suicides that have been taking place across the campuses and the mental harassment. Rohit Vemula
It's a
and
very
Payal
important
Tadvi being
argument,
the main-
Suraj, that you're making. Let me take this across to Dr. Balagangadhar. Dr. Balagangadhar, you heard what Suraj Yengde says. You've researched very closely on caste. Where do you stand on this, and how do you see this whole debate playing out? Let's cut the political noise. Let's look at it purely from substantial point of view in terms of both caste discrimination and achieving equality and equity on campuses.
Thank you for having me. I've been working on it for more than 4 decades now on these and similar issues. Responding to what Mr. Yengde said, you see, this is a very popular, prevalent, moralizing sloganeering. In the sense that, see, the story we have today of the caste system is beginning of 20th century, end of 19th century story of Sanskritist called Senar and a sociologist called Bugle. This story has been simply taken over, basically stolen from these two gentlemen, and that has become the foundation of our policies. It's one thing to say that there is some kind of injustice, more than some kind, serious injustice, and so on and so forth in India. It's quite another to relate it causally, because they have to show the causal relation between the so-called caste system and these injustices. The second point I want to make is, you see, speak about equity.
Shashank saying...
Go ahead.
Right.
Go ahead.
About equity. See, equity is, in some senses, to do with the equality of outcomes. Something to do with the outcome. When you give someone something, something comes out. Equity is with respect to that. Equality is slightly different than this notion of equity. But you see, to be able to say why OBCs, SCs, STs do not produce Nobel Prize winners, do not produce top scientists, top programmers in India, has to do with discrimination of whatever kind. You need a very serious understanding of society, psychology, and so on. Now, so if it is not the cause, that is, if caste system is not the
that's
cause,
a very
whatever
important point, Veera, that he's making, that one needs to understand the society. But let me ask this question to Shashank Singh. Shashank Singh, you know, one of the observations of the CJI today was that it was the new rules, equity rules, are too sweeping and they need a proper review. Now, the point is progressive legislations are supposed to be sweeping because, you know, here it's about life and death, and there's been a 118% rise in caste discrimination cases. The good thing is people are reporting now. What do you expect? Like, you know, is the general category overreacting to this?
Hi, Vasudha. Thank you so much for having me here. See, it's very, very important to understand that why do we have these policies in place right now, and it's been due for a very long time. And if we understand, if we simplify for a common man to understand what is this policy is just to protect a person coming from a marginalized caste, marginalized background, and who is facing the discrimination. If somebody is facing the discrimination, that person has a place to report it. That person can go to the authorities and ask for a welfare atmosphere in the university as a matter of right. And as we understand, the learned professor was speaking about the society, and we are living in the society, India and abroad, and the situation of the Dalits, whether you are living in the urban area or the rural area, it's very difficult to understand that from the viewpoint of the upper caste right now. You need to understand that the marginalized communities are making a very small representation in all these top institutes. I also come from one of the top law schools in India, and I have seen myself and many people around, for example, that the JNU for that matter, or the IIT Delhi, and we have seen the increase, the deaths. It's sort of a society is being said, but the point is that why there is a majority of the Dalit students are dying. Rohit Vemula is a prime example. Payal Tadvi, then there's a Muthu Krishnan in the JNU. All these people are the first generation learner from their hometown, from their families, and they're coming to all these institutes and they are ending up their lives. When the caste discrimination is there, it has to be reported as a caste discrimination ground. So it's very important to have this particular section 3C of the UGC, which is mentioned here, which is being challenged as well. And we respect every opinion, but we need to understand that all these things are happening because the core nexus is the caste. If somebody is being discriminated on the basis of the caste, then it has to be
Respond to that, Amita Sachdeva.
We need to
making strong points there. Sushant Singh, Sushant Singh is making strong points there. Amita Sachdeva, respond to that. How do you see those arguments that he's making?
See, if I may say, please have a look on section 8B and 8E of the new regulations. Section 8E says that the committee can forward the complaint to police when there is already SC/ST Act in place. So this is a double remedy other than SC/ST Act given to the specific community. Now they have included OBC as well. So I must say OBC includes not only...
But this is specific to higher education institutions, right? We need something in colleges because students or young adults are also at a very influential, at a very, at a stage that they need this kind of protection. So this is specific to colleges, isn't it?
So I'm saying there is already SC/ST Act which can be availed. If anybody has the grievance, there is Act already in place. So what is the purpose of giving the another remedy when there is already one remedy available in the law?
So Suraj Yangde, the question is it a problem of laws or is it a problem of spirit of enforcing justice? So as many laws as you may bring, as many regulations as you may bring, it defeats the purpose as long as the spirit of enforcing equality and equity is lost in a debate which is politically and socially one that is extremely polarizing. Suraj.
I think, Veera, you have hit, I think, the nail on its square head, because I think no matter how many laws we can go about debating about the procedural aspect, the criminality about it, and the legal precedents that have set. If the argument of the learned Honorable Counsel of Supreme Court has to be taken into consideration, then we don't need any other laws, right? The Indian Constitution is sufficing of it, and then let's have that as a framework, and then let's do away with all other legislation that we have passed. That argument really is not, unfortunately, very clever on its face. However, having said that, Veera, I take your point. We may keep on passing as many laws as we can. Now, one of the limits of SC/ST Acts is
to you also the fact that there is equal opportunity centers which are to be, which are being seen as mandated, and of course then there is equity commissions that are being talked about. So shouldn't it be important to look at the whole law, in a wholesome way? Let me ask this question to Professor Balagangadhar. So this is probably one of the few times where the judges have said that jurists have to look into the language of the laws. Is it normally done when it comes to such sensitive matters? And why is the language here so important?
You actually picked up a very important point, namely how the Supreme Court judges are responding to it. First, they say you need 2 or 3 expert jurists who should look into this. Which means that the way it's written is, they are very polite, but I won't be, is written probably some glorified clerks and glorified advocates. Jurisprudentially, what the judges are saying is this is a juridical nonsense what they are saying. It's not a question of 2 remedies or 3 remedies or 15 remedies. It has to do with what law is, what jurisprudence says what law is, what the Supreme Court justice says. Second point, equally important. They said this is going to damage society. See, when Supreme Court justices make that remark, you must realize one thing. These kind of laws are literally destroying not just the education system, Indian society and culture. It is a problem of Indian education system.
Okay,
you simply cannot solve it by moralizing talk.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Professor Balagangadhar. We are running completely out of time on this conversation, and hence I'm interrupting. I want to give the last word to Sushant. Sushant, go ahead. How would you see the arguments that have been played out so far, and what's the road ahead?
Yeah, thank you so much. The first thing is I think the ma'am has mentioned about the point 8B. the police authority should be informed. I think this is very important provision to have, because this is the first time the university got as a mandatory provision that if you are being reported as a caste discrimination, any atrocity or the discrimination, you should not keep it to yourself. You should also inform the police authorities, to the state, so they can do some justice. And when we are talking about the reporting, we all know that how the police complaints and all these harassment are being underreported in the rural areas. When these students are coming to the urban areas, it is the institution to build up a new personality. These people are going to be new leaders. At the same time, we are dealing with a different kind of people who are in the dominating position. So it's a very wonderful law to have, and there are many more changes should be done for the advancement. With respect to the protection.
Point taken, Sushant Singh. I think that is the moot point of this, Veera. The fact that, we need laws that are progressive in nature, but at the same time, we also need the framing of these laws to be as consultative as possible, so that people, the society especially, also understands the importance and the need for such laws.
That's right. The matter will obviously be finally decided on by the Supreme Court. But thanks to all four of you for joining us.